Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3 special edition first college football playoff rankings reveal of 2024. We're doing this again because our audio stunk on the first one. So we're trying again. So hopefully you guys can hear us. Let us know in the chat if we're sounding better than we sounded the first time. They have now stopped explaining how the college football playoff works, and they are now actually getting into the rankings. So let's do that right now. Ari. Number 25, Army, 24, Missouri, 23, Clemson, 22, Louisville, 21, Washington State, and 20, Colorado. Only one team in that bunch really still in striking distance of the actual playoff, and that's Colorado.
And I think now we're about to get into the bunch of the Big 12 teams and the ACC teams right here, which is like the next 4 out portion of the bubble watch, where you have a bunch of teams that are going to be 7-2, 7-1, teams that aren't really in pole position at the moment, but could play their way back into things.
Yeah, and we just had, so as you said that, K-State at 19, Pitt at 18. So there's their Big 12 and ACC.
And now Iowa State at 17. It's going to be...
there it is. Yep.
Like we're going to be seeing that right now, and this is exactly where you anticipate these teams to be. And then, of course, here, Ole Miss, Andy, the game that we're going to be going to on Saturday together at 16. And Ole Miss has a chance to not only just win a game, but probably jump not only to 10, but into the top 10 if they were to win on Saturday.
Yeah, that's the thing. Ole Miss, if they win Saturday, now they're not out of the woods because they still got to keep winning. They would have to play Florida and Mississippi State after that, but they would be in much better shape. And even if they, I would think they'd be in the top 12 next week if they beat Georgia. But even if they weren't, I think they'd probably find their way into it by the end.
I don't think there's any scenario on earth where Ole Miss isn't firmly in the top 10 if they were to win on Saturday. But, that's it. And LSU checks in at number 15, and they're kind of in the same exact scenario as Ole Miss. They're not playing Georgia. They're playing Alabama this weekend, and that's the big-time SEC doubleheader banger that we're going to get on Saturday that will probably eliminate 2 or 1 of the 3 of those 4 teams. I think Georgia, if they lose, would still be in the thick of things. So,
yeah. Now, Georgia would play Tennessee next week, so they really don't want to lose. It would really be bad if they lost this week because that puts you in a must-win against Tennessee. But, yeah, this is interesting because you have the 2 teams that we think are in elimination do-or-die mode right now in Ole Miss and LSU. Like, okay, we don't know where Georgia's going to get slotted here, but we think they're going to be what? 3 or 2, right?
Oh, they're actually, Andy, they're doing, yeah, I do think they're going to be 3 if I had to guess in this show. I think Ohio State will be 2, Oregon will be 1.
Now they're doing it in the bracket.
They're doing it in the bracket.
Second team out, A&M, which means Boise State's in the top 12.
Right. And for anybody that was following along on our show earlier today, talking about the Indiana SMU debate, I think that basically settles it because, you have Indiana also that's going to be in the top 12 here, obviously as an undefeated team, but there's probably not going to be much of a discussion from a head-to-head standpoint if Indiana has 1 loss at the end of the year. Unless SMU wins out, of course.
Yeah, and the SMU thing is, we've talked about this a few times. Where's Boise State at 12? So in this case, they're not raising Boise State up as the 5th highest ranked champ. They would be, if they were the conference champ and ranked here, they would just be in at 12 and they'd be the actual 12 seed.
And then Alabama checking in at number 11, which is, I think, fair, right? I thought there was a chance maybe they'd be 7 or 8, but 11 sounds about right to me.
Well, and this is not the Alabama team of the Saban era. Like we've seen that. We saw it with the Vandy game. We saw it with the South Carolina game. We saw it with the Tennessee game. Like this team is not the same thing. They're not the Death Star that they were before. So this feels about right. Like they got to win their way in. They got to win in Baton Rouge this weekend, or they're probably do you think they flip places with LSU?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the case. Whoever wins that game, like Alabama's playing for the right to stay there. I don't know how much they would jump up because at that point LSU would be a 3-loss team, and that's not going to be a win that you hang your hat on. Notre Dame checking in at number 10.
Yeah, which is about where we thought they'd be. They just got to keep winning. Like if they keep winning, I don't know that they can rise much higher, Ari. I think 10, 9, like they got to hope somebody loses ahead of them to get a home game.
Yeah. The discussion with Notre Dame is interesting because I wondered if A&M kept winning, if Notre Dame could potentially sneak in as a 2-loss team, but that doesn't look too promising right here at number 10.
Okay. BYU is your highest ranked Big 12 team, so they've made them the 4 seed. But they're the number 9 team.
In a way that people can understand so that they can just like actually visualize how this works. BYU is 9, which means Indiana is going to be in the top 8, Andy. What a world we're living in, huh?
That's right. Indiana's got a home game as long as they keep this up. Now, if they beat Ohio State, they're going to the Big 10 championship game. So then you're talking about some crazy stuff there. But Indiana's in a good spot. Are we thinking Indiana's the next team we're going to see?
I'm thinking that Indiana is going to be the next team we see, but I am also here for the chaos. Yeah, there we go. Indiana's 9. So that's the right thing. And
Indiana's the number 8 team, the number 9 seed. Yes.
No, but what I was going to say is like that means that Tennessee is ranked ahead of them, and I don't know if that's just. But that's the power of beating Alabama, right? Like, and there's your committee's first acknowledgement, Andy, that big wins matter more than losses because they've already ranked a team that has lost a game to a pretty inferior opponent, but has a win over Alabama ahead of an Indiana team that's blown everybody out all year. Like that's a pretty telling thing.
And Indiana's only going to get one chance at a big win. That's going to be Ohio State. Like they don't get another chance. There's nobody else on the schedule that's going to work that way. So this is going to be very interesting.
Does it bother you seeing Indiana behind Tennessee?
Not really, because they're going to play. Now, I guess if this is going to give Tennessee a home, is Indiana going to go? I guess if this is the difference between playing in Knoxville or Bloomington. But see, I'm not worried about that because Tennessee's still going to play Georgia. Like either Tennessee's going to earn its way above Indiana. Well, there it is.
Well, yeah.
So there's your game at Neyland Stadium versus in Bloomington. But if Tennessee loses to Georgia, then they're not going to be ranked ahead of Indiana.
But if we have to like talk about the importance of seeding, that's a pretty big switch. Playing in Neyland and playing in Bloomington is a huge difference in that matchup.
It is, but again, this is not taking into account what has to happen.
But
I guess they both may lose another game.
Yeah, it's a starting point from right now. This right now means that the committee is more impressed with what Tennessee has done to date than Indiana. And who do you think's had a more impressive year?
Well, Indiana probably. But whose Indiana
resume is better?
Tennessee's.
Do you think that the loss should cancel out the win?
The loss to Arkansas? Like, I guess we have to see what else happens to Arkansas because Arkansas has looked bad against LSU and against Ole Miss. They did not look bad before. They looked like a team that was capable of challenging.
But here's where it gets inconsistent, Andy, because now you have Penn State at number 6, and they have a loss and haven't beaten anybody, and they're ahead of both Indiana and Tennessee. Explain that one. There's
your issue if you're Coach Siggs. And now at this point, like Penn State's not going to have any more chances to do anything else. So there's Texas as the 6th seed, the number 5 team, which means you've got 3 conference champs in your top 4, which makes sense.
See, I am annoyed by that ranking. I already tweeted. That's how good of a multitasker I am.
That's amazing. I'm impressed.
Penn State being ahead of Indiana is absolute bullshit. Like that is just like there's no. What are you going to say right now? That's gonna rationalize that.
There's
Penn
not
State
really
has
a good
no
way to
wins. They have no wins that Indiana doesn't have and a loss. Now Indiana might join them, and then at the end, if Indiana has a loss, then you can put Penn State ahead. But in the time being, this should be flipped. If anything, I think that Indiana should be 6 and Penn State should be 8.
Well, I would be fine with that. Now, I do wonder when Indiana plays Ohio State and they have the game to compare, Like if they're both equally close, like don't you have to put Indiana above Penn State at that point?
But the thing with Indiana is, and like this is probably what I'm going to end up doing right after we're done here. But like the thing that Penn State fans are most, or not Penn State, Indiana fans are most sensitive about, and maybe rightfully so, is that they are going to have things go against them because of the logo on their helmet. And we, as college football playoff protectors, are the ones saying, hey, no, they look at all the rankings and they look at all the stats and the statistics and whatever that song was that you sung to me earlier, and they get that right. That's wrong. That's just straight wrong, dude. Like that's like there's no in the if you want to be it'll work itself out in the long run person, that's fine. But in the moment,
well,
Indiana has done more than Penn State.
I don't think it's going to work itself out because if Penn State has a loss to Ohio State and is ranked ahead of Indiana, though neither of them have really beaten anybody. And then Indiana gets a loss to Ohio State, then Indiana's going to get knocked down further when Ohio State is going to be number 2. We know that now. So they're going to be the 2 seed. They'll be the 5 seed, number 2 in the true ranking. So you would think Indiana, if they lose by 7 to Ohio State, would not drop at all. But like, how bad would that be if they dropped Indiana, but don't punish Penn State similarly?
Yeah. Man, I'm like irked by that. I don't know why. That one hit me in the plums, man.
Well, it's not you're not wrong because it is a pure logo play. Well, lack of logo for Penn State. But yeah, lack of logo. Again, at the end of the year, if you want to come to the conclusion that Penn State is better than Indiana, when the resumes are complete and if they both have a hypothetical loss to Ohio State, that's fine. But if Penn State and Indiana played, I think Indiana would be favored. Indiana has not lost yet. Penn State has no quality wins that Indiana does not have. What is the justification for doing that? And like, you want to see consistency in the line of thinking. And I know that they do this in a group by group setting. And I don't know if the committee is rewarding Penn State for playing Ohio State within a touchdown, but like Penn State does not have. If that happens and Indiana plays Ohio State within 6 or 7 or 8, like,
yeah, at the end of the road,
them dead even.
At the end of the road, if you want to say we think Penn State's better, if we think they would beat each other when you have all the context, but in the incomplete context world, there is no argument for Penn State. None.
So Ohio State gets the magic 5 seed spot. That's the one we said is the catbird seat. So yeah. Ohio State in this version of the ranking would play Boise State first in Columbus, and then they would go play BYU in the Fiesta Bowl.
That's called the lottery right there. That's called hitting the lottery. Now, the thing that we have to make sure that people understand here, Andy, and people who listen to the show are smart, so they know, but I'm going to say it anyway. What we do on Sundays is a projection of what we think it's going to look like at the end. This is what it would look like if the season ended today. So there is a difference between what we have here and what we're going to get, right? Like, because there are things that are in this bracket that haven't worked themselves out yet. So like we're still in the process of coming to that conclusion, but this is not what it will look like at the end, obviously.
Yeah, so Alabama's going to Austin. Notre Dame is going to State College if it works out this way. Indiana's got to go to Neyland Stadium. Yeah, the Indiana Penn State thing is truly befuddling. Like the Tennessee thing, you might be able to make a case for because Tennessee's beaten one of the teams that they've got in the bracket right now.
Yeah.
But neither Indiana nor Penn State have. Penn State has played one of them and lost to it, and Indiana hasn't played one of them yet.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, comparing our bracketologies to what we have here, like, we're doing a pretty good job at this, Andy.
We are. Like, I had Miami ahead of Georgia in the most recent one. And I like, the more I think about it, the more I'm not sure if Georgia's gonna drop one of the next two.
Yeah. I mean, they could drop it on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. This is going to be a lot of fun though. Like if this were how it worked out, I do like the matchups. Like Indiana going to Neyland would be a very fun game. Notre Dame going to Penn State is a classic lack of logo helmet matchup. Alabama at Texas, two SEC teams that didn't play. Now maybe there's still a path for them to meet in Atlanta, but I would hope they don't actually do that before they got to play in the playoff, because I'd rather see them play for the first time in the playoff.
Yeah, I mean the bracket looks great, and hey, look at that! How did we do that so quickly? We got a talented producer, Andy. Look at that.
Oh yeah, well the graphics team and producer River, they don't sleep, they don't read. They're always ready. They stay ready so they don't have to get ready. So who has the toughest path in this one? Like, what's the highest ranked team with the toughest path?
The highest ranked team with the toughest path is Texas.
Yeah. Well, okay. What is it? It's not Miami?
Well, Miami doesn't have to play a game against Alabama.
I guess that's true. That's true.
Texas has to beat Alabama.
Miami's the team with the bye with the toughest with the toughest potential matchup in the second round.
Yeah, but if you look at the difference between being 6 and I don't know, 6 and 8. Like, I think I might rather play Oregon than Miami and Bama, or Texas and Miami, right? Like that. Those are two. Like Oregon's going to be a tough game, and you're going to eventually have to play somebody really good. You know,
even if you get past Oregon, you're probably playing Ohio State,
and then you're playing Oregon on the way. So, like, Texas. If Alabama or Texas were to run it all the way, they'd have to play Texas or Alabama. Then they'd have to play Miami, and then likely would have to play Georgia before getting to the final.
Ohio State would have your easiest path into the semis, because Ohio State at 5, and they're actually the number 2 ranked team in this ranking if we have the actual full list there. But Ohio State is the number 2 team. They're in the 5 spot. They would play 2 teams that are ranked lower than them, and this is what we've been trying to tell everybody. But Boise State is ranked 12th, and they're the 12 seed, which is good there. BYU is ranked 9th, but they're the 4 seed because they would be the Big 12 champion in this situation. So Ohio State would get to play 2 lower ranked teams to get into the semis. Meanwhile, Oregon has to play the winner of Indiana, Tennessee, which is a much harder game.
Yeah, you want to talk about how hard it would be to win a national championship? Holy shit, this is hard. Like, I mean,
yes.
Except, being the 6th seed is just absolutely brutal, because you would hope that the way it would turn out is that you don't have to play like Alabama. And look, guys, we know that Alabama isn't Alabama of the past, but Alabama is still a really tough out in this setting. Like, that's not an easy game for anybody. That wouldn't be an easy game for Georgia. You know what I mean? Like, we're
and remember, like, it's Alabama here. The fact of the matter is, it could be Alabama, LSU, it could be Ole Miss, depending on how things go. Like, those teams are still in the hunt too. Yeah. So don't get hung up on this and think this is the final. It's not.
Here's another thing that you have to consider too, Andy. And I ran into this because I put Ohio State in my 5 on Sunday. I think you did too, right? I can't remember.
In the 5 seed, yes.
So if you put Ohio State in the 5, you have Ohio State being 10-2 with wins over Indiana and Penn State, but 2 losses to Oregon. Do you think that puts them at 5?
Yes. I also think, and this is something the committee, I don't know that they'll even consider, but they probably should. Like, the 5 seed probably should be the loser of the SEC or the Big Ten championship game, whichever one you think is better. Because you should not be punishing that team for having made that game.
Well, Andy, too, the thing that's so funny about this, and this is another thing that we need to talk about, but the way that this bracket is done, if it were to turn out this way, you're presuming what I said about Ohio State, that they win the rest of their games, which include Penn State and Indiana
beat Oregon. They lost by a point in Eugene.
But here, let me get to the finish line on this one.
Okay.
And then Texas is the same scenario. They beat A&M, they finish the season with 1 loss, and then they lose again to Georgia in the SEC championship game. The difference between those two seasons is pretty marginal. Now, Ohio State's win over Penn State would be an extra quality win that Texas wouldn't. Or the Indiana win for Ohio State would be the extra quality win. Ohio State would have
and the Penn State win
and
too.
Indiana.
Yeah,
but Texas would have Texas A&M, so one of those games cancels each other out. But
Right.
Ohio State would be left at the end of the year with an extra quality win that Texas wouldn't have. But the difference between the 5 and the 6 is like night and day. And you're talking about teams that virtually had the same season. Like that is like getting the 5 spot is going to be the most coveted spot in the entire bracket if it turns out this way. And the difference between 5 and 6, which is arguably the worst spot, is razor thin. So, like, look at me and tell me right now, Andy, if Ohio State stands to gain being the 5 seed, which would then put them on the same exact side of the bracket as Oregon, the team that they're playing in the Big Ten championship game, what on earth do they have to gain by playing that game hard? Why would you even want to win? You're going to have to beat them eventually. You want to beat them at the end, not in the Big Ten championship game.
Let me throw one other thing at you, though. The fact that Boise State is here at 12, if they win out, as Zach says in the chat, they won't be 12. They'll move up 1 or 2. So they would be the 11 or the 10. And that puts like an Alabama or an LSU or an Ole Miss or Texas A&M or Penn State, depending on what happened, or an Indiana at 12.
Yeah.
So that makes the 5 seed maybe not as good.
Do you think that Boise being 12 already means that it's guaranteed to move up a spot or 2? Or do you think that they just leave Boise at 12 every week and let the teams that are playing each other like shuffle through? Because the thing that's interesting here, Andy, with that thought is Alabama is number 11 and Boise is 12, right? So the presumption is that if Alabama were to lose to LSU on Saturday night, that Boise would move up a spot. But that's not true, because I think LSU would jump Boise in that scenario. I think
they would too, and I think Ole Miss will jump Boise if Ole Miss beats Georgia.
Yes, and I don't think that Georgia would fall behind Boise if they were to lose. So, I'm not sure that's guaranteed, what you just said.
If Alabama beats LSU and if Georgia beats Ole Miss, then everybody else is still, like, Boise still has a chance to move up.
Yeah, Boise, I think it's probably more likely that Boise would be a seed that's not 12 at the end of the road. And this is the perfect point, too, of how you cannot plan. Like, you can't tank the Big 12, Big Ten championship game with the hopes of getting the 5, because you don't know who you're going to meet there. You might have, like, Boise could be the 10 seed and then playing somebody on the other side of the bracket, and you have a tougher path at 5. So you just have to win your games and hope that it works out that way.
Possibility at you, Ari. BYU's undefeated. They're playing a rivalry game against Utah. Everybody else in the Big 12 already has at least 1 conference loss. A lot of teams have 2. So BYU has Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, Houston. Like, Arizona State has been good. Houston just beat Kansas State. Like, what if something crazy happens and the Big 12 championship game is a matchup of a couple of 2-loss teams? Like, and Boise wins out.
Yeah.
Then Boise's the 4.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else surprise you, Andy?
Not
Louisville
really.
22. That's important. Louisville 22.
Louisville 22. And I think Louisville can move up, and I think they will. Like, if Clemson rebounds and starts winning again, Louisville moves up and just stays ahead of them because of the way they beat them, even though Clemson has 1 fewer loss. Now, I still think Clemson might lose to South Carolina. So,
yeah, South Carolina looked really good on Saturday night.
Washington State being in there is big for Boise State. That's helpful for Boise State. So if Washington State
is probably going to finish 11-1 if we're looking at their schedule.
Yeah. So if they were to lose another game, that hurts Boise State. But if they can stay in there, that helps Boise State quite a bit. And you look at the remainder of the schedule, Washington State is probably going to win out, barring something crazy.
So Louisville plays Stanford, Pitt, and Kentucky. Now, we don't know how the Kentucky game's going to go. It's on the road. Kentucky's fair.
And they always lose to Kentucky. So,
but if they win their next 3 games, you might be looking at a top 15 team at the end of the year. which would
is
then
great for
bolster
Notre Dame, SMU, and Miami.
Notre Dame and SMU and Miami. It's not going to matter for Miami, I don't think, because I think they're going to get in as long as they get to Charlotte. But like, if you are a Notre Dame hater, or SMU finds itself in a debate with somebody, having a top 15 win, like, I think that's a really important thing to like see coming. Now,
SMU needs that. SMU needs something like that, because the rest of unless Pitt keeps winning, the rest of the schedule is not giving SMU that.
Yeah. Because I think like if you have a question about whether or not Notre Dame could make the playoff with 2 losses, what if at the end of the year A&M and Louisville are top 15? Like, I think they might make it still with 2 losses. I don't know if they were to go to USC and lose to USC, because USC
is changing quarterback, so it could be a different USC. So it's a good question. I think last weekend showed us that, like with the Iowa State game, with the Louisville Clemson game, like, you can't make assumptions in November. Like, November makes fools of us all.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be some results down the road that blow our mind. Like, let me throw a weird one at you. Like LSU, Alabama, elimination game. Like, Alabama's out if they lose. What happens if LSU wins this and then loses to Florida or Vandy? Would that surprise you that much?
It wouldn't.
If that happened, I don't think it would.
I mean, LSU, I know they've only lost twice, but LSU feels like a team that's had like 20 chances this year for some reason to me.
They're very
same with Alabama.
Down.
They're like, it's like, oh, LSU stinks, and then all of a sudden they're great, and then they stink, and they're great. They're probably just pretty good, right? Like, I don't know if I think that they're a team that is going to be making any runs at the end of the year. But
Double O'Neill, Colorado has 2 losses, and they won't be ranked above Boise if they win the conference title. Exactly. If either BYU loses a couple or the non-BYU Big 12 team wins the Big 12 championship game, there's a chance that Boise State's the 4 seed if they keep winning.
I'm trying to look at schedules as we're talking here, so forgive me if I'm talking slow.
Oh, it's
so
okay.
at the end of the year, if Colorado wins out and then wins the Big 12, they would have wins over Kansas State, who's in the poll, and
they lost to Kansas State.
Oh, sorry, their only loss would be in the Big 12 would be to Kansas State. They have 0 quality wins right now, and they're playing Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. So their only chance at getting a quality win is beating potentially an undefeated BYU in the Big 12
championship. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like,
it won't matter because they're automatically in.
If they win the conference title, they're in. So,
yeah. But I'm just saying, as it pertains to Boise State, like, I don't know if that's a fact.
I think if the non-BYU Big 12 team, maybe Iowa State, if they don't lose again, that's really it.
Yeah.
And Iowa State, I think this is a dangerous game against Kansas this week. And then you've got Farmageddon and also Cincinnati after the Kansas game. So there's a lot that can happen, especially in the Big 12. And then the Army thing at number 25. Like, Army's got to beat Notre Dame. That's all there is to it. Army needs to beat Notre Dame and win the American. They actually could probably drop a game in the American, although UTSA and North Texas are the only ones they can drop at this point. Those are the only other ones they're playing in the regular season. That Army-Navy game, the official Army-Navy game, is after the playoff is selected. So we will see if Army winds up in the American Championship. They are undefeated in conference play right now. And then Tulane is undefeated in conference play. Navy, remember, just lost to Rice, so they have a conference loss.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Army 25 thing, I've seen some stuff on Twitter of people fired. Like, that doesn't move the needle for me, because like
if they beat Notre Dame, they'll pop right up.
And yeah, and
if their chance.
If they beat Notre Dame, then they're probably still going to be. If they beat Notre Dame, that means they're probably good enough to run the table in the American, and it won't matter anyway. Like, I don't know that. Like,
and I think Army might get in over Boise State at that point, but also that's the one where the Big 12 needs to worry about not having a 2 or 3 loss conference champ. That's where they got to start.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that they would hop Boise in that scenario if Boise's a 1-loss team.
But they might hop the Big 12 champ if it's not BYU.
Yeah. So it is possible, technically, that there's a Big 12 list playoff, right? Like, it's within the realm of
possible. Yes, it's not guaranteed. Possible. Yeah. If they have a 2 or 3 loss conference champ and Army wins out and Boise State wins out, it's possible.
I just don't think you can leave Boise State out under any circumstance because of the way they played Oregon in the beginning of the year.
As long as they keep winning. If they lose again, it's another story.
No, I'm saying if Boise State's a 1-loss team and then the crazy thing that we're talking about comes true and Army's an undefeated AAC champ with a win over Notre Dame, like, I don't know that I would go to Boise first to kick somebody out.
Yeah. It's funny as we say this, Nevada is Boise State's next game. I remember back in 2010, Boise State had risen very, very high in the rankings. And like we were talking about them, about if they kept winning, maybe they might make the BCS championship. The same day that Cam Newton led Auburn back against Alabama, Nevada beat Boise State. And that was that.
Yeah.
So now I don't think that's going to happen this time. I think the one team that has a chance to beat Boise State would be they play UNLV again in the Mountain West Championship. That would be the game to watch.
Yeah. Oh, what else here? I'm looking at here.
Ari, think about how many teams we've talked about tonight. Think about how different this is than this time last year. We're like, here's the top 4. The 5 and 6 might have a chance, but maybe not.
Yeah, there are a lot more teams. There are. That's a fact. We can't just stop, man. I know we got some time to fill, but just don't do this to me.
Stop the fight. Man's got a family. All right.
I want to ask you. I remember because we haven't talked about this. What do you think of SMU outside of the top 12?
I'm okay with it because they have a loss. Now, granted, it's to an undefeated team. The best team they've beaten is Pittsburgh. It was one of those things where Pittsburgh was undefeated, but if you actually paid attention to their season, you knew they were kind of living dangerously, and they were going to run into something like this. So, again, at Louisville, you said it earlier. Louisville may do some work for SMU here.
Okay. Just throwing this out here, okay? And I'm not trying to stir shit, but this is
no, stir away.
Look me in the eyes and tell me that Penn State has a better resume than SMU.
Oh, I don't think I can do that.
That's a really big difference between those two.
Illinois are Illinois and Louisville on equal footing as wins?
Did you see Illinois in the top 25 anywhere?
No, I did not. And I haven't seen Illinois beat anybody really good. I saw Illinois beat Nebraska, but Nebraska's not that good.
You could make the case that losing to BYU by 3 and losing to Ohio State at home by 7 is a wash, right? Their losses are the same. You lost to a team that is either undefeated and the favorite to win their conference, or a team that has one loss to the number 1 team in the country. Either way, I think both of those losses are understandable. And then you go through and you look at what they have actually done in the ACC. SMU just got done beating the crap out of another team that was undefeated this weekend on top of their win over Louisville. What has Penn State done to be 6?
Yeah, we got people in the chat that don't even remember their history. Jose Dominguez. Andy was the biggest Florida homer betting against Miami. Jose, I picked Miami in that game. It's on the internet. There's a show. You can watch it.
With people, Andy, I think about this all the time because I see it on Twitter all the time. Like, people say you said shit that you didn't say a lot.
Yeah.
And do they actually?
You can pull up the video.
But what? Where do they come up with it? I'm just curious. Are people just why did they don't even know why they're angry? What are you talking about? He literally picked Miami in the game. Literally. Where did you come up? Where did you come up? I did.
You did. Yeah. Oh, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. I'm sorry.
Didn't?
You weren't here yet. You weren't on that show. That was me and Jesse. Jesse
put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
That's right. That's right.
No, but back to my Penn State slander, okay?
Slander away.
SMU has a win over Pitt and Louisville, both of whom are represented on this list. Penn State and SMU both have a loss to a very good team.
Mm-hmm.
Why the hell is Penn State 7 spots ahead of SMU in this poll right now? Why is Penn State ahead of Indiana? What the hell are they doing with Penn State? They almost lost to Bowling Green. What am I missing? I don't get it. I don't understand it. I really don't. I don't care. I'm not mad. I just don't understand it. And it bothers me when I don't get it.
All right. I'm not trying to defend this because I don't think it's defensible.
Yeah, but try to play devil's advocate. And
the only thing I can think of is they're saying, well, look how tight they played Ohio State. And we think Ohio State's really good. Which you're gonna get a comparison point for Indiana, but you're not for SMU.
But what metric in the protocol does that fall under?
The good loss one, which is the one they use to make the excuse when they do something that doesn't make sense.
Did you think that was a good loss?
No, I thought they should have won the game. Like, I thought they should have recruited, a dynamic receiver out of the portal and won the game. But that's
was there any point in the game outside of the first 10 minutes and it was 10-0, 10-0 that you thought Penn State was going to win?
No. No, in terms of game control, something the committee likes to talk about.
Yeah.
I felt like by halftime, by the end of the second quarter, you were fairly comfortable Ohio State was going to win the game.
We have to present this because he was nice enough to
pay for it.
Stephen Light, Ari, SMU is in the ACC. As a Penn State fan, I too would have preferred playing in the ACC.
Well, you would have probably lost to BYU and won. Actually, yeah. Penn State might have lost to Louisville.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, listen, are you 100%?
I don't know if they would have beaten Louisville.
Like, this is the thing too, because like I've fallen back on the recruiting rankings and all this stuff my entire career. So if you're one of these people, I love you. I'm with you. Look, there's nothing that anybody could tell me right now, Andy, that could convince me that it is a certainty that Penn State would beat Indiana, and certainly not a certainty that they would beat SMU. Like,
now, I almost want a 4-team Big Ten tournament, so I could see Penn State and Indiana and just see what that looks like and who's better.
Dude, I'm gonna have spirit fingers tonight. The second we, these aren't spirit fingers. These are spirit fingers. I'm gonna.
He's never heard "Zombie" by the Cranberries, but he's seen "Bring It On" 54 times.
54 in 1 month. I used to slam that movie. Andy, can I have dibs on the Indiana column?
Do it. You go write that, and I tell you what, I'm gonna let you cook. We will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9:30 Eastern. I've got 3 saucy takes coming your way because it is Wendy's Sauciest Take Wednesday. I might even let you throw in a saucy take because I know you got one right now. And we're going to talk about these again when we've had a chance to sleep on it. We've had a chance to really digest and see what's going on. But I think I know where you're going with this column. I cannot wait to read it. Everybody get yourselves to On 3. Ari's going to be cooking. Won't take him long to write. When he's inspired, the fingers just fly. There's like sparks flying off the keyboard. We'll talk to you again at 9:30 in the morning.